Secret Belgian Bookbinding, episode number 3, Sewing the Pages to the Cover. For today, you will need some drawing paper to sew into your book. You will need the cover that we sewed together last episode, and if you need to view that episode, you can click in the upper right-hand corner. You will need a needle, waxed thread, and the guide you used for punching holes, as well as the awl, and you optionally could use some clips and a page creaser or bone folder. So let's get started. First, we need to prep our drawing paper to be sewn into our cover. You will take 4 sheets of drawing paper and fold them in half, and this will create one signature. Then you will sew a signature into your book, and you can sew between 4 and 6, sometimes 8 signatures into one book. It just depends on how thick your spine is. The thicker the spine, the more signatures that you will need for sewing in. I'm using that page creaser to crease my signature just to make it nice and crisp, which is optional, but it does keep everything nice and neat. So that was my first signature. Now I am going to finish prepping the rest of my signatures. I have not put the page creaser down them, and so I'm just going through and making sure that they're really nice and crisp with that page creaser. And like I said, you could sew up to about 8 signatures into one book depending on how thick your spine is. I ended up sewing in 6 signatures into my sketchbook. So all of my signatures are ready to go, and now I just grab that hole punching guide, and I'm going to stack all of the signatures on top of each other and make sure they are lined up. I place the hole punching guide on top of the signatures, and then I will secure this with my 2 clamps. I'm going to use those lines that are across that hole punching guide to help me draw a line on each signature to show me where to put the hole. So I just use that guide and put a little line going down the signatures, and it basically ends up being like a dot on each signature, but because they're all stacked together, it'll be a line that you are drawing. So I continue working my way down the guide, drawing a line down the signatures for every line on the guide. Okay, so that's finished. So now I am going to grab the cover, and I'm going to make sure that all of those lines that I just put on the signatures lines up with all of my stitches from before. So we will be using 2 stitches on the spine together in order to sew each hole from the signatures to the cover. So we're just looking to make sure that everything lines up before we get started in this, because if something doesn't line up, then it ends up not working. Once I know that everything is all lined up, then I can remove the clips and remove the guide, and I'm ready to start punching holes. I have a cutting mat that I use that helps protect my surface. If you don't have a cutting mat, you could use like a stack of old newspapers or some old cardboard or something like that, just so that you don't accidentally punch into the surface you're working on. You open up the signature so that the spine is facing out, and then you're going to use the awl to press at every little mark that you made on that signature, and you're punching through 4 pieces right here. So it is a little difficult to punch through all 4 pieces, and you punch the whole way down on that first signature on each mark that you made, and then you move to the next signature and then the next signature until you've punched holes in all the signatures. Okay, I have pressed holes in all the signatures, so now I just refold them, and I again use my page creaser just to make sure that they are really well folded. And now I have all my signatures ready, so we are ready to get started on the sewing. Grab your cover and your wax thread and take your wax thread across your book the number of times that you have signatures times 2. So if you have 6 signatures that you plan to sew into your sketchbook, you want to take your thread across your cover 12 times. This should give you about enough thread. Of course, if it's not, you can always tie it in the middle and then start again with some more thread. But it's always nice to only have to tie in the beginning and tie in the end. Okay, so we're ready to get started on the sewing, so let's get the extra signatures out of the way and that cutting mat, and that way we just have the cover and the thread, and we'll grab the needle and the first signature. And for our first signature, we are going to start with laying it on the back cover. We're going to sew all of our signatures in from back to front. We will open that up, and then we will use our needle and thread to sew it in, obviously. But before we get started, it helps if you use your 2 little clips to clip the signature into your book. Now, don't clip it shut. You want to clip it at the middle opening spot as if it was completely open, so that you can sew starting in the middle and sew it to the cover, working your way in and out from the middle. So you clip it to that back cover. Grab your needle and your thread up the needle, but don't tie a knot in it. Okay, to start sewing, I'm going to take my needle through that first hole from the center of the signature out towards the cover and pull all of the string through and let about 3 inches of string there to tie with. And we are going to go into the second set of strings on the cover. Now, the reason I'm going into the second set of strings on the cover is because I counted my holes and I have 1 less hole than the number I had in my cover. So I want to go under the second set of strings there, not starting in my first set of strings. And if you have the same number of holes in both your cover and your signature, then you would not do this. You would go under the first set. But for me, I am starting under the second set because I had 1 less hole in my signature. Then I go back up through that first hole. So I come down through the first hole around the second set of strings, and then up through the first hole. And it will attach it, as you can see, to that second set of strings. Then I'm going to pull it nice and tight, and then I'm going to tie it together right there so that it creates a little knot. I will say there are a few different ways to do this sewing of the Belgian bookbinding, and so if you watch a different video, they may tell you a different way. I do know I like this way. It is very secure. It keeps the signatures where they're supposed to be. I have tried it other ways and I felt like it did not work as well. So what I'm teaching you is what I believe is the best method for sewing these signatures in. Alright, so my knot is sewn in, or my knot is tied, and I'm going to take my needle through the second hole in my signature and pull the needle and all of the string through. And I will go under the third set of strings that are on my spine there. So pulling all of that thread through, and then I will go under the third set of strings on my spine. So when I say set, it's 2 strings that you are sewing together at a time. If you look at your spine, they should have been on there in sets. You can see on my spine, it's on there in sets. And so each time you're going under 2 strings. Now I'm going back up through that second hole, and I'm going to pull through all of my string again, and then I'm going to go down through the third hole, and I will go under the 4th set of strings, and then I will go back up through the 4th hole. Now, if you don't get the idea yet, you're going down through a hole, under 2 strings, up through the same hole. Down through a hole, under 2 strings, up through the same hole. And you continue that all the way till you get to the bottom of that signature. And I will show you here in a moment what you do when you get to the bottom. So I'm going to speed it up right now just so that I'm not wasting your time, and then I will slow down again when we get to the bottom of the page. I'm almost to the end of sewing in this first signature. I'm on my second to last hole. I'm going to go down through my last hole just like normal, I'm pulling my string tight and I'm going down through my last hole just like I have been for every other hole. And I'm going to go under those last 2 strings on the spine, just like I have been on every one of these things. But instead of going back up through that last hole, I will add my next signature. So I'm ready for my next signature to be added in. You can see what this is looking like. It's all lining up and everything. And I have all of my all of the holes lined up there to the spine string. So I grab my next signature and I'm going to clip that in just like I did the other signature, where I just clip in one side of it and then I start again. What I do to start again is I go up through the bottom hole on the second signature. So when I was finishing that first signature, I came out through the bottom hole, looped under 2 of the strings that were on the spine, and then I put the second signature in and came up through the first hole on the second signature. And then I go about sewing it just like I did for the first one. I continue this and attach each signature in the exact same way, only sometimes the signatures are attached by the thread going from first signature to second signature at the bottom, or second signature to third signature at the top, and it'll go back and forth for each signature whether it attaches at the top or the bottom. And I continue with this, go down through the hole, around 2 strings, up through the same hole, down through the hole, around 2 strings, up through the same hole. And I do this until I get to the top of this signature. So you keep just sewing like this for each signature. When you get to the end of a signature, before you go back up through that hole, you put on a new signature and you go back up through the hole of the new signature, and then you go down around 2 strings, back up through the same hole, down around 2 strings, back up through the same hole, and you continue like this till you get all 6 signatures sewn into your book. It takes a little bit, but it is so worth it in the end, and it's not hard work. You just sit there and up and down with your needle. So once you get all 6 strings in, it should look something like this. Hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks so much for watching.